Hello everyone, and welcome to the second installment of the UCLA Alumni Career Chats webinar series. My name is Cristina Ruiz, and I am excited to be here to moderate our session, Successfully Launch and Advance Your Career. We have two wonderful alums with us tonight, Mehul Jain, class of 2012, and Thach Nguyen, class of 2011, who will each be giving us their insider secrets to the job search process from two very different perspectives, one as a successful job seeker and the other as a recruiter. We also want this session to be an interactive one, so make sure to click on the cubed grid on the top right-hand corner of your screen and activate the Q&A option. This will allow you to submit any questions you may have, as well as vote for any of the other questions that you like from other submissions. On our end, we will try our best to get through as many questions as possible. I will have Mehul and Thach first start with their introductions. Mehul?
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. Hi, everybody. My name is Mehul. I graduated in 2012 with a degree in economics and a minor in global studies. Today, I'm really excited to share my job hunting experience with you. I've had the opportunity to work at a couple of different companies, and I look forward to sharing that.
Thach?
Awesome. Hey, guys. My name is Thach Nguyen. I graduated from UCLA, like Christina said, in 2011, and I've been predominantly in kind of the HR recruiting people space since I've graduated. Super passionate about kind of career guidance and helping people cultivate their professional journeys, and I've worked at a couple companies, including Google and Airbnb most recently, and I'm excited to hopefully share some tips and tricks today with you all.
Okay, perfect. Mehul, let's start with you, and you can go into your TED Talk style format.
Great, thank you. Hi all. So to kind of kick things off, I'll walk through the different companies I've worked with. So I graduated about 4 years ago, and in the past 4 years, I've had the pleasure of working at Mercer, which is a consulting firm. From there, I went to SpaceX, which is one of Elon Musk's company, and I'm currently at a startup called Collective Health. So I wanted to start off with giving you an idea of how I got each of the jobs, as well as share some of the tips that have actually helped me secure my jobs, and then answer any questions that you might have. So Mercer, I interviewed with on campus. So some of you who might be econ majors are maybe familiar with the on-campus recruiting, and this is for consulting or audit, anything kind of the finance field. A lot of firms will come on site. They do a lot of different talks, career fairs, just meet and greets, and through there I discovered Mercer. So I applied for an internship prior to my senior year, interviewed on site, secured that internship for the summer before, and then actually had my full-time offer as I started my senior year. So I began working with Mercer, I want to say 4 days after graduation, so it was a really quick turnaround. And what really drove me to Mercer over some of the other firms was the culture there. When I was just leaving college, I knew that I wouldn't quite land my dream job, but I wanted to work in an environment where I really absolutely loved everybody that I interacted with, would be challenged, and really kind of build a very broad skill set. And Mercer seemed to be a great fit for that. Consulting in general was a great fit for that. From there, I kind of focused in more on HR and benefits specifically, and transitioned over to SpaceX. That lead happened actually through Mercer. So it was a contact of mine at Mercer that made me aware of an opportunity at SpaceX, and I worked closely with her to get introduced to the hiring manager at SpaceX and applied. I initially got rejected from SpaceX because they had filled that position, and I wasn't applying sort of blanketly. It was just that one targeted position that I wanted, because that was a company that I was very passionate about and wanted to be a part of. So even after the rejection, I persisted. I contacted the hiring manager, sent her a very long thank you note, kind of recapping my admiration of Elon, how I followed him for years, and what I could bring to the team. And lo and behold, I heard back from their hiring department, and they wanted to schedule an interview. So I went through the interview process, came on site, and was the SpaceXer. I had the lovely pleasure of working there for a little while, and then decided that I wanted to be closer to my family. That's up in Northern California, and came to Collective Health. So Collective Health was actually a transition from SpaceX. Everyone that I worked with here, I met while I was at SpaceX, interacted with the team here, and it was a relatively easy transition because they already knew my working style, they knew my work ethic, and the position that I applied for was a really good fit for what I'd already previously demonstrated to the team here even before coming to the company. And collective was also an opportunity for me to change career paths. So since I've graduated, everything I've done has been very benefits focused, and I really wanted to expand beyond that. And at collective, it's still in the benefits sort of insurance realm, but I'm in a sales role here. So I was very excited to really expand my horizons there. That's how I got to here from graduation. And then a couple of things that really helped me along the way, the Sharp Fellowship. I was a fellow when I was at UCLA, and that was tremendously helpful, just in terms of having someone to help review my resume, help with cover letters, and even do warm introductions to recruiters, beyond valuable. So if you have the opportunity to really sort of tap into the UCLA network, I would highly, highly encourage you to do that. In addition to that, whatever relationships you build, truly make an effort to keep those alive and keep them going beyond just that initial conversation. And this is not to say that you should force a relationship with somebody, but if you naturally connect with anyone that you meet through school or even your different career paths, make an effort to just stay fresh on their radar. And that can be as simple as sending them an email every now and then, or anytime I'm back in LA, I will reach out to old professors or old managers, and I'll try to have dinner or coffee with them just to see what they're up to, how they're doing. And always keep your contacts updated too. As you're moving around, it helps them feel like they're kind of part of that experience with you. And then just really simple tips on interviewing. I got this from the person who interviewed me at Mercer, that I was the very first person who asked him about people that I would be meeting. To me, that was just mind-blowing. Like, why would I not know everyone that I'll be interviewing with, and why wouldn't I do a little bit of research ahead of time to see where they came from, what backgrounds they have? And then as you're thinking of questions that you want to ask during your interview, tailor them to each specific person. So think about what background they're coming from, how you'll interact with them on a day-to-day basis, and then come up with questions for each of those different sort of interactions, as opposed to blanket, like, what would make me successful at this job? Well, many things, depending on who you're asking, what perspective the answer is coming from. And those would be kind of my top tips. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I will open my heart, let you know as much as I can.
Let me see if we have any questions coming in. Mehul, can you talk about what kinds of things you did in your applications to stand out? I know you kind of mentioned it, but do you have any specific example?
Sure. So one thing that I'm very proud of is my resume. There's a lot of resumes that I've come across because I've also assisted with recruiting at my various jobs, and all of them look the same. So all resumes are generally black and white, one large like name in the center and all the experience down below, which is great. It captures all the relevant information. But if there's anything you can do from a design element to make yours stand out, I would highly encourage you to do that. So for me, for example, my resume, my name is in bold green letters up top, and the format of it, the way it's laid out, is it's just cleaner. It looks very different from what you see most resumes come through. And make sure it's proofread. The formatting, keep it crisp, keep it clean, and then really make an effort to keep it one page, because most recruiters, I don't believe, look on second pages. So I'm sure Thach will give you all the inside secrets there. But I think that has helped me stand out. And also just persistence and notes. Again, like things that I think are very just common sense and simple, a lot of people don't do. So handwritten notes, just expressing your gratitude for the interviewer taking their time out of the day and mailing them out. Or even just a quick follow-up email to make sure that you really are acknowledging the time that they've taken out of their day.
Okay, perfect. Well, then it's great that we have Thach here with us. Thach, your turn.
Cool. Totally agree, by the way, before I get started, on what Mehul said about the designing and making your resume look different and standing out. Cool. Well, really quickly, I'll do my background and story. So I'll start maybe a little younger at my pre-UCLA days. So one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was I immigrated over here when I was really young. I believe I was 4 years old. My family grew up pretty poor. Four kids, a family of 6. we were in like a 2-bedroom apartment for like tiny 2-bedroom apartment at like the dodgy end of LA for a really long time. And I remember there was this student who's like the brainiac grade A student, the one that was always teacher's pet and everyone sort of admired and knew was like the smartest kid in class. His name's John Tomasek. He would always go to school every day wearing a UCLA sweatshirt and UCLA backpack and UCLA shorts. And I remember one day asking him, why are you always wearing UCLA stuff? And once again, John is like the super smart kid in class, the brainiac. And he said, well, that's where everyone goes that's the top school in Southern California. And I remember I was like, I believe I was 11 years old when he told me that. And in that moment, until college applications, 6 months later, I told myself I'm going to UCLA. That's where students go. That's where I'm going. Like the top students go, that's where I'm going. So come time for college applications, I actually only applied to UCLA. It was my dream school. I'm really glad I got in because I didn't have a backup plan, and I really tried my best to make the most of my UCLA experience. So a couple things I did when I was at UCLA, I was really, really deeply involved. For people who are students right now, like that's the #1 thing you can do to prepare yourself for that first job out of school. I was a part of USAC, so I was actually on student government. I ran for office. I was an RA for a couple years as well. I was in a fraternity, a social chair of my fraternity, and I actually started a nonprofit called Swipes for the Homeless, which I think still exists at UCLA today. So I was really, really involved, and I found that really helped catapult me into my first job. And you'll see what happens with resumes and careers is it kind of compounds. It's like a snowball effect. Your first job gets you your second job, gets you your third job. So the combination of me doing those things actually was what landed me my first quote-unquote professional job, which was at Disney. I worked at Disney while I was in school. It was a year-long internship, and during my interview process, I came with all this marketing material that I had done for my USAC election, and I came with different newsletters that I had written for my floor when I was an RA, and just materials and samples of my work. I remember my manager, Jamie, at Disney was just super impressed, and she was like, wow, I can't believe you're doing this already as a college student. And she hired me, and that was really what led me to my first big break, so to speak. And by the way, I found that job on the UCLA Career Center board. So I was I had I believe it was either a daily or weekly alert letting me know about new jobs that were coming on, and I would just apply. I think I probably applied for 300 jobs before I got that one. And so Disney, I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for the Career Center having that opportunity, which kind of opened everything else up for me. I've ever since then worked for Target, Penney, both in recruiting, and then Google. After that, I was a recruiter at Google. And most recently, I've been at Airbnb, where I've been actually managing a part of the recruiting team. So I have recruiters who report to me, and we help to identify and select talent for the company. One thing to know is it's sort of not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. New grads, we probably have, in terms of supply versus demand, supply being applicants, demand being jobs, 300 to 1. There's a lot of new grads and not that many new grad jobs. And so what you really need to do is stand out. And I think there's a couple of things. #1, like Mehul said earlier, referrals is super important. So tip and trick coming from a recruiter on the back end, when I, as a recruiter or someone on my team, receives a referral from someone who's an employee, we are actually required to, even if we don't think it's a fit, take a really nice long look at it. There's reports that come out that show how many referrals did you get for your jobs, and did you respond to all of them within 24 hours. So it's actually really, really critical that both at Google and at Airbnb, we have referral reports to make sure that recruiters are following up with the referrals they're receiving. So that's a really great way to just make sure that a human, puts their eyes on your resumes, if you can get someone to refer you, like Mehul said earlier. And then I think the other thing is just making sure you're specialized. So this will be something that is a little bit more difficult to do when you're still in school. But let's say that you want to get into marketing when you have your first job at a school. My advice is to start doing marketing for Bruin Woods, doing marketing for SAA. There are all sorts of extracurricular activities that kind of help get you there. Like if you're interested in recruiting, what I do, be a recruitment chair for your fraternity, be a recruitment chair for your club, be a recruitment chair for your sorority. These are ways for you really early to start specializing, and the first job is always the hardest. From there, it gets a lot easier, I promise. So those are some tips and tricks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Thach. So I see that we have a few questions coming in. So everyone, please make sure we have Thach here and Mehul. As he mentioned, he's worked at Google, Disney, Target, JCPenney, now at Airbnb. So make sure to send in your questions so we can get. Make sure to click on the cubed grid on the top right-hand corner of your screen and make sure to activate that. So let's get started. We have some questions here from Andrew Kwan. He's asking, what tips do you have for people who still don't know what field to work in? Maybe.
I can start. Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to start with that. So my biggest piece of advice there would be to start broad. That's actually what I did when I started out. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but think of a field where you'll learn lots of different skills that are marketable across different roles. So examples of that, I think nowadays being strong in Excel and Excel savvy, having that under your belt can go a long way. Public speaking, presentations, and project management, those are all very transferable skills. So when I thought of it in those terms, consulting seemed like a very good fit because it was going to connect me to several different industries. So you kind of get exposure into what all of those look like, and then you can further fine-tune what you actually want to do. But you start off with a very broad paint stroke and then hone in on what truly interests you. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would have said something similar, and I would just add along with that is, start broad, try to check out as many things as possible, and I would also add, learn quickly. So, if your first job or internship or even extracurricular activity is marketing, and you realize that you don't like it, like you should really quickly pivot and try business development, try sales, try HR, whatever it is, because the longer it takes you to figure out what you want to do, the longer it's going to take for you to progress in that career. 5 years of experience just generally is actually, like, this is a saying that we like to say a lot in HR, like a jack of all trades is a master of none. So if you have 5 years where you did sales for 1 year, marketing for 1 year, HR for 2 years, and business development for 1 year, we kind of look at that and say, like, number one, you kind of done a little bit of everything, but you're not an expert in any of those things. And number two, I get nervous that you actually don't know what you're going to do. So if I hire you for my business development job, I am really nervous you're going to have another midlife crisis and decide you don't want to do business development and move into something else. So that's why I think learning quickly, learning quickly whatever it is your passion is really important, so that you're not being perceived that way by someone within recruiting.
And to piggyback on that really quickly, a lot of that learning will most likely be self-initiated. So when you are in a new position, seek out those opportunities, whether that's cross-departmental, on just like volunteering on a project, or doing anything outside of work. So again, going back to SpaceX, I had an interest in recruiting. I was in benefits, had an interest in recruiting, spoke to the team there, and would actually represent SpaceX at different recruiting events that we did. It was off sort of my regular working hours, but it gave me an opportunity to explore a different area that I was interested in to see if I liked it or not. So definitely make sure you're proactive about the different things that you may or may not like.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. I see that we have a few questions coming in about the actual application. So I'll start with Angela Scales. She wants to know, is it true that a recruiter might only look at your resume for 30 seconds? Thach, this one's for you.
30 seconds sounds long. I actually think I probably look at resumes less than that. I would say probably closer to 10 seconds. I know pretty quickly if someone has the right experience from what I'm looking for or not. And one thing to be to help maybe demystify and clarify is recruiters aren't arbitrarily deciding, oh, this person looks good, this person doesn't, or I'll take a chance on this person, I'll not. Recruiters have their own mandate. They have hiring managers. So hiring manager is the term for the person who's actually like the manager for whoever this hire will be, or whoever goes into this role, who their manager will be. And we have been told, hey, I need someone with this much experience, this much education, whatever that is, this specific technical skill set. And so we kind of know, like, we have a very rigid amount of experience and like specific a set of skill sets we're looking for, that it doesn't take 30 seconds. It takes like closer to 10 seconds to really quickly figure it out, which is why what Mehul said earlier is super important. Make sure it's clean, nice to read, well designed. Like that's really important. I realized you didn't say that yet. Make sure that you have a really well designed resume that's easy to read, and that it's not more than one page. Like if it's more than a page, it tells me that you're not being concise. You're probably trying to like over elaborate and like over emphasize what you're doing, and like to me those are flags. And so yeah.
So before I go to another question, what would you say is the most important part of the resume that you're looking at? If there was one thing that you were looking at.
Do you want me to answer that one too, Christina?
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't realize that was me and Mehul. The most important part is the work experience. When you are what we call an industry hire. So an industry hire is more or less someone who's been at least working for like more than 3 years when it's not like an entry-level role. If it's a new grad hire or like an internship hire, which I would imagine is pretty relevant to this group, I think work experience is important. Like if you have internships, that's really important. But we're gonna assume that you'll have less of that because you are, either still in school or recently graduated. And so in that case, I will look heavily at your extracurricular and volunteer experience. I will say once you're past the 3-year mark, I know this is like not what people want to hear, but it's the truth. After you're past 3 years, I kind of stop looking at those things and I only go off of your work experience. So like that's kind of like the critical sensitive period where like your volunteer and extracurricular really like is incredibly important. It's always relevant, but it becomes less important and kind of tapers off over time.
Perfect. We have another question. How important is a cover letter and do you read them? For Thach again. And this is from Andrew Kwan, sorry.
Cool. Mehul, I know you did a lot of campus recruiting too, so I would love your thoughts. I don't think this is like a black and white. There's no policy of yes or no. It actually has really varied from company to company I've worked for. I would say overall, like the general consensus from all previous companies I've worked for is no. I don't look at cover letters. I think that cover letters are, in general, pretty generic. Like everyone kind of says something really similar, so I just have a tendency to like, it just becomes like, if everyone's telling me the same thing, like it becomes sort of a waste of my time because it's no longer anything unique or special. It's kind of like a very canned response. What I do think can be really cool is if people do something else. So like instead of spending 30 minutes on a cover letter, which I think is what most people do, one piece of advice I would like heavily suggest to people interviewing or applying is take those 30 minutes and try to do something really special and unique. Like make a video, you know, make like a T-shirt, and you know, like a T-shirt about Airbnb and why you really want to work there. I've actually personally received things like I've received a piñata before. I've received cookies before, like cookies that said like I'm an amazing baker. Imagine how great of a, you know, financial analyst I could be. Like, is it relevant? Not really, but it's cute. It's really quirky. It shows you have personality. It shows you're creative, and it makes you stand out. So there's no right or wrong, but I think cover letters are a little bit outdated. But you can spend that time doing something else that makes you stand out. That's how I would encourage you to invest your time. Mehul, do you have any? I know you've done campus recruiting, so I like, you know.
So
I'm sure you have thoughts on that.
I definitely do agree. I don't think they are necessarily required, but you also want to be mindful of the industry and the job that you're applying for. There are some companies that are much more old-fashioned, right? And they might expect a cover letter, and that's a great opportunity for you to highlight what you've actually shown on your resume, or to explain any discrepancies or things that don't come off as a very strong reflection of you. A cover letter would be the place to do that. What I don't think is a good use of a cover letter is kind of copying and pasting for all the different companies that you've applied for. You should truly use it to your advantage as sort of a second source to explain yourself, and explain sort of differences in your resume. But overall, I agree more with Thach, where I don't think they're that necessary. I have moved away from cover letters. I think I only really sent them out when I did campus recruiting, because I think there was a requirement. I remember like on the UCLA job board, the UCLA Career Center like job listings, it would require you to upload like a resume and a cover letter, so I would do it for that. But once you sort of move away from that, I think you're okay not having them as well.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Actually, can I add on to that?
Yes. Go ahead.
Mehul said something that I thought was really relevant. I actually think one thing to be aware of is also what's your audience. So there are companies that are considered more conservative and companies that are considered more progressive. So I would imagine that companies that were more conservative probably do require a cover letter. And like companies, like I'll just use Airbnb as an example, that are a little bit more progressive. Like we're typically younger. It's a newer company. We've only been in existence for 8 years. We don't care that much about like traditional things that you're supposed to do. Like we don't like it when people come in suits for their interviews. We want people to come wearing like bow ties and, you know, and bright colored things that show off their personality. And so I would say if you're applying for something more traditional, like maybe a bank, maybe consider doing a cover letter. If you're applying to a more progressive company, maybe not so much. And that applies not just to cover letters, but to everything, to thank you notes, to whether you're supposed to dress formally, like tailor everything you do to your audience.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. And now we have a question from Gloria, and she's wondering, are there any keywords in a resume that you or any recruiter hate to see or feel are overused? Thach?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. No, there's nothing that like I hate. That not in terms of keywords. I really dislike it when people who are like undergrads or people who have less than 5 years of experience can't stick to a page. So that's just like a pet peeve. It just feels like, it just feels like they're not good at being concise, or they just want to put everything they've ever done, and it feels like they're just not very good at like targeting their message to their audience. It just shows a little bit like lack of judgment. And I also think that people who use this is one thing I hate. Actually, let me take that back. One thing I hate is people who, sorry, not people. I love everyone. I hate resumes that have really generic things like self-starter, hardworking, collaborative. Like, I just feel like a resume, like the point is for you to really stand out and do something different and like show me, don't tell me, instead of saying I'm really driven, or like say key traits driven, I want to see, actual accomplishments. So like drove, recruitment efforts for my fraternity, um, you know, uh, by and saw an increase of 240% year over year. Like that's much better than saying, oh yeah, I'm a driven person, like, but instead showing me that you're so driven that you've like increased, had a lot of great achievements in what you do. So yeah.
Could I add on to that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
These are more tips to give Thach what he's looking for. To give him that one-page resume, you can consider sort of expanding or like digging into the margins. So you don't have to be restricted by like a 1-inch margin, top, bottom, and sides. You can go ahead and dip into that, adjust like your font size, all those types of things. And then for the job description, what I generally do when I start a new job, look at the actual job description that the company posted, use that as the launch point for my resume. So I'll pull out those like bulleted things that I'm supposed to be doing in my role and then actually plug in what I've truly done with the statistics that he's looking for. So say I oversaw this program in the time frame that I saw it, participation grew by X%. So you can add in that color commentary, but you have a skeleton that you can start with.
That's perfect. Thank you. So we have a question from Julie. She's asking, what advice to you concerning presence and postings on social media do employers about? Thach, maybe?
Mehul, do you want to take that one first? I feel like this is sort of another one that's a little interpretive.
Sure. So just to clarify, what advice do you concerning presence and posting in social media do? I'll be totally honest, I am silent on social media. So I have all these accounts, but I don't generally use them. And I've gotten jobs, so I don't know. I can say that you always want to be careful about presenting yourself as proper and poised, right? You don't want to come across as some crazy wild child because companies don't look upon that too favorably. Even progressive ones, they want you to be able to maintain a level of professionalism and do your job well, and not worry about you showing up to work 3 days late. So, but I'm going to kick that back to you because I just don't have too much experience with that.
Yeah. So I think that there's a little bit of a myth that people stalk your Facebooks and Twitter accounts. We have way too much going on to do that. Yeah, I'm sure someone out there does it, but very, very, very few recruiters do it. So don't let that haunt you. Don't let it edit you. I think social media is great. I think that it's a great outlet and a place to build connections and community. So I wouldn't be scared about every single thing you do on it at the fear of a job, not getting a job. What I would say is when you become a little bit more seasoned in your career, so I would say maybe like 2, 3, 4, 5 years out of school. I know this is really far out for some people, but this is just something to starting to think about. Is it's not so much that social media will eliminate you from roles. So once again, I'm not going online, looking up my candidates, seeing what they're doing. It's a little bit invasive and intrusive. But what I have seen social media do is I am someone who I commonly like to post about things I'm passionate about, political issues, things that I really believe in and stand for. So I post about homelessness before. I've posted things about the election. I've posted things about diversity and lack of diversity and equal pay for women. Those are things I'm passionate about, and I've actually seen people in my network actually reach out to me and say, it sounds like basically they've said that they're like they followed what I've posted, and they like they really appreciate it, and actually have offered to like recruit me, and like, hey, like we'd love to, you know, have you at Facebook if you'd ever be interested, and like I'd love to refer you if you ever want a job there. So I actually think social media, I wouldn't worry it as much about like a way to disqualify you, but it could be a really great way to build your brand and for people to like know like, hey, like he's a, you know, an intelligent person, she's a really open-minded person, like she's someone I'd love to work with. Yeah.
That's great advice, Thach. So we have a question from, hope I don't, Zhu Ying Zan. Do you think mentioning a name of a contact that you chatted with prior to the interview would help make an impression when applying?
You know, hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to say no. I feel like it's a little name droppy, and I feel like recruiters hate name dropping. It makes them feel like it's nepotistic, and it makes them, you know, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, right? Like, why would you want to hire someone who like wants to like get ahead by like who they know and is kind of nepotistic? And so I would not write in a cover letter or in an email outreach like, you know, like, oh, I know so and so. It probably won't go over badly, but there's a chance it may, and I wouldn't risk it. I guess the reward is really not worth the risk. Like I wouldn't benefit from it much. I think what's a much better way is to actually, if you know someone who works for the company, ask them to submit a referral on your behalf. Like I mentioned earlier, referrals are taken really seriously at companies, and also, I guess I would also sort of be concerned if you know, let's say Bob at Airbnb, and you name dropped him in the cover letter or when you email me in your outreach. I'm kind of concerned, why didn't Bob send you a referral? Like, maybe Bob doesn't want to refer you. Maybe Bob doesn't think you're a fit at Airbnb. So actually, I think it could do more harm than good.
That's great to know. I wanted to answer the question from Andrew Kwan. He wants to know if this video will be available on YouTube after. And I just wanted to say that, yes, the video is available immediately after the session is over. So you can just click on the same link that you came to, and you'll be able to see it there. Okay, so now we have a question from Angela. She's asking Thach, what role does LinkedIn play, and how important is it for the recruiter side in terms of, well, I'll leave it at that.
Hi.
Hello?
Hi, my connection was bad, so I just switched over to my laptop. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah, so Angela, oh, sorry, let's see. So, oops, Angela wants to know, what role does LinkedIn play and how important for the recruiter side?
You know, so I think LinkedIn is a lot more important when you are experienced. So once again, like I sort of view that as like there's like that 3 to 5 year threshold. Like when you're a new grad, back to what I said earlier, supply and demand, right? It doesn't make sense for me to be reaching out to you on LinkedIn when I have 100 candidates who are, you know, equally qualified and really interested, because, you know, every single year there's a batch of like millions of people who graduate college and want jobs. I think LinkedIn is a lot more important to make sure it's up to date and, you know, it has everything you've done so that recruiters reach out to you when you are closer to like that 3 to 3+ years of experience, because then you start being in that like industry or experience hire category, as we call it, where we'll start reaching out to you. So I'll just use myself as an example. Like, gosh, I could not have gotten a recruiter like for the life of me to reach out to me when my, you know, my first 2 years out of school. Like, my experience wasn't that unique. Like there's a dozen people who, worked at Disney or worked at Target because they have those programs. I'm at a point now, I've graduated 5 years ago, where I probably get them on a much regular basis. And I think right now in my career is when it's super important that my LinkedIn has my accomplishments, has my updated titles. When I'm promoted, I update it regularly. I connect with people I know, so I build my network. So it's more of like an investment for the future. Yeah.
Sorry, the other thing I was going to add on to that, even though it might be more of a long-term play, you can start following companies that you're interested in on LinkedIn now. So you can kind of see what types of jobs they post. And LinkedIn does a great job of showing them in your feed. And there's a page that you can go to see open jobs as well. So again, these might not be entry-level roles, but if you are, as you gain more experience, it's a great avenue to see what else is out there, just by following the different companies.
And one thing I would add is actually, I'm sorry, I was thinking from the vantage point more so like as a recruiter, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn like sourcing people, like reaching out to people. But actually I think Mehul made a really, really great point, which is it's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to be like, wow, like I didn't even know you worked at Mercer. Like, after you graduate, you kind of lose touch with people. They change jobs. You never, you can't constantly be up to date. So, so now that I rethink it, like, no, when you're in school and when you are a new graduate, I wouldn't bank on recruiters reaching out to you as often. But I do think it could be a really great tool, like she said, to follow companies, see what jobs are available, follow on your networks. There's great tools on LinkedIn where you can like go to Google and see who of your first degree connections works at Google, who of your second degree works for Google. So I think there are really, really great benefits outside of being reached out to, like I said earlier.
That's great. I think you already started giving some of this advice, but Lauren Kruger is asking, what advice do you have in terms of seeking out entry-level jobs for someone with little experience?
I can kick that one off.
Yeah.
This is going to be a really odd answer, but I would encourage you to go out and get experience. So it might not be job experience necessarily, but there's so many other things you can do to gain experience. So as Thach was mentioning earlier, you can volunteer. There's a lot of clubs that you can join. You can try doing your own thing. You can try having your own little side company. That's building experience. It's a little bit harder to land a role without anything under your belt, so I would really encourage you to seek out those opportunities that are maybe unpaid, where there's a higher likelihood of you getting on board, so you can start building that resume. I personally began interning my sophomore year in college. They were unpaid up until my junior year, but I did a few, actually I think every quarter I did an unpaid internship to just build up that experience. I too was incredibly involved. Similar to Thach, I was an RA, worked at UCLA Anderson the entire 4 years I was there in a lot of different clubs, and all of that counted as experience for me when I was applying for my very first job. So that would be the best piece of advice I could give you.
Yeah, I think that's super good advice. I would have said, I would echo all those same things. I would maybe add on two things. Your GPA actually matters when you are a new grad. Once again, resumes, recruiters look at them differently when you're a new grad and intern versus when you're an experienced hire. So when you graduated 8 years ago, it's time to let go of your GPA. Do not put your GPA on your resume when you graduated, in 2008. Maybe put on the awards that you had and stuff, but I do think that once again, I hope everything we're both saying is starting to like is consistent and complements one another. Like as a new grad, unfortunately, there's huge supply. Like I have way more candidates than I know what to do with, and so I'm not really sure what to differentiate between them. Like I have 100 candidates from UCLA, 100 candidates from Berkeley. Like it's not as though like unfortunately UCLA is a really, really great pre-qualification, but it doesn't make you stand out. It just makes you like qualified to even be considered, because we typically look at elite schools. So what from there separates you from other UCLA students is like if you were in honor societies, if you had really great grades, if you had scholarships. Like I get excited at Google. We specifically look for high GPAs if you graduated within 3 years. So if you graduated less than 36 months ago, we actually will like take really heavy emphasis into your GPA. After 36 months, we stop taking that into account. And then the other thing that I realized I haven't mentioned yet, or neither of us has mentioned, that actually is really important too, is I know it's really sexy to work for like an Apple, SpaceX, Google when you graduate, because like, I mean, like who doesn't know those companies? It's fun, but I think Mehul and I both got lucky and we're at the right place at the right time. But I think what's a more conventional and like probably easier path to get to those big companies is working for like a smaller company or like a less sexy company or even a startup. If Google, let's assume that Google and Airbnb and SpaceX are getting like 100 resumes for every new grad job, a startup is probably getting like 10, maybe 5. So just using pure statistics, like what do you think you're going to have a better chance of landing a job in if you want to get some marketing experience, applying to a marketing role at Google where you compete with 99 other people, or applying to a marketing job at the startup that maybe won't be as sexy, will definitely pay less, you'll work harder, longer hours, but you'll get some marketing experience and you have a 1 in 5 shot in getting it. And then doing that for 1 or 2 years, you may love it. I personally love startups way more than big companies. Or you may not like it, and now you have 2 years of experience, and you can go apply at Google, and you're a much, much stronger candidate.
And to build, sorry, Christina.
No
to
worries.
to build on what Thach was saying, working at a startup also gives you incredible opportunity to learn, because there is so much that needs to get done and there's generally very lean teams doing all of that. You have a lot more that you can take ownership of, and then as you are looking to move to the next place, you have a lot more work experience that you can share and bring to the table. So you're going to learn at a accelerated rate at a startup than you would at a more established company, just overall, I think.
I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add to that too. If we're talking about learning, I just realized we haven't spent much time talking about startups, right? And I think that's like a really, really important and like a huge market that I think new grads aren't looking at enough. Not only will you learn more and be exposed to more things, you'll probably be promoted quicker too. So I'll use my own example. I was at Google for 1 year. And then I actually, funnily enough, I reached out to the head of recruiting at Airbnb and said, hey, I love Airbnb. I use it every time I travel. I'd love to work there. Keep in mind, this is when I had already been working for 4 to 5 years. So she was much more responsive, because she was like, hey, I have an industry level role. I would love for you to fill. I think if I'd done it when I was like an intern, like I'm certain she wouldn't have responded, but anyway, she did, and I was at the end of I had to make a really tough decision: stay at Google, which is a much at the time a much sexier company. People knew it way more back then. Very few people knew about Airbnb, or go to this other company that's a little bit more of a risk, but there could be more reward. It's growing at a faster rate. Like it was, 200 people like in 2011, and like 400, then 800. Like it was like doubling year over year, and so it was a tough decision. And I decided to go to Airbnb. And right now, in terms of like the scope that I'm managing, the team I'm managing, my level of seniority or whatever is what it would have taken me. What it's taken me to 2.5 years to achieve. For a fact, I know this because I worked at Google. They said it would have taken me like 6 to 8 years to achieve the same like level in my career. So that's something to think about. Like, it's not always the best thing to go work for like that huge, sexy company. Like, it may be worth working for a company that you think is up and coming. And you know, Sheryl Sandberg says this, like, if you find a rocket ship, like, hop in, like, don't ask where it's going.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. We have a few questions coming in about career transitions. So we have Jeannie Ma is asking, what is your advice for young professionals that have a few years of work experience and are looking to transition into a new industry?
So I actually just did this, Jeannie. As I mentioned earlier, my experience up until I came to Collective had been in the benefits world. And after being in it for a while, I realized I wanted to expand outside of that. It wasn't something I wanted to build my the rest of my career on. So to pivot from that, I'm still in the same realm. Like, I'm still in the benefits world where I can apply that knowledge, but in a different role. So I think that's the easiest way to slowly start moving out of a role that you maybe want to expand out of. So here I am doing sales, but selling a health insurance related product. So it's really leveraging what I've already done to date, building on that experience, and then going into a new role. So I think it's best to try to find some sort of a bridge or a stepping stone from where you're at to where you want to go. And it'll be a slightly slow transition because you'll have to learn new things. But I think that's the best way to make that move, because a lot of times, and I'm sure Thach will talk to this, it's difficult to do, I don't know how to describe this, it's difficult to jump directly into like an experienced role, but in a different industry or a different sort of vertical. So you kind of have to gradually build up to that. I don't know if that makes sense. Thach, maybe you might be more eloquent with that.
This is a hard one. I'm kind of struggling to find the words too. I totally know what you're trying to say. So there's a few different ways to think about it, and it's so situational. Like, there's no, like, this is the golden rule for career transitions, because it really depends on the person. So one is it depends on your level of experience and seniority. So if you have 3 years of experience and, like, let's say you're a senior analyst, senior associate, or a manager, like that level, like that between entry and mid level, I think you're actually within fair game to, like, just blankly apply, because as a recruiter, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, you have some experience, which is good, but you haven't been doing it for so long. Like, so let's use a hypothetical example. Like, let's say you're a senior marketing analyst, so you're in marketing, you've been doing it for 3 years, and you decide, I actually realize my passion is business development. In my eyes, I was like, all right, I would ideally prefer someone with 3 years of business development experience, because, you know, obviously, you know, you're like building upon experience you already have. But you've been doing this for, you know, not so many years where, like, you only think as a marketing person, and I like that's coachable. And then, you know, probably you're only qualified for more junior to mid-level roles, like I'd hire you as a, you know, business development analyst, maybe senior business development analyst, but, like, you're not so far in that path that it's like irreversible. So I think back to what, you know, we've been saying, leverage your referrals, you know, try to get like uniquely, you know, like find a unique way to reach out to HR or recruiting. If you're closer to like 6, 7, 8 years and you realize, wow, I hate what I'm doing and I want to transition, which does happen a lot, I actually think maybe an MBA is a better way to go, because MBAs are a really great way for people to, like, it's a good hunting ground. Normally after you do an MBA, like a management consulting company like McKinsey, Bain, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, those companies will hire you as a consultant, and you can kind of like start like do a career transition that way. So it really depends on how far you are in your career.
That's great to know. We're almost running out of time, but so I want to do some quick answers section. So I'll go through some of these questions. If you can give some very quick answers. Still talking about the transitions. A question from Angela Scales. She wants to know if someone has changed jobs a lot in their first few years out of college, will that harm their chances of getting a position?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Yeah. And this is back to what we said earlier about learn quickly, right? That's fine. We get it. Like, don't look at my resume from the first few years. I took a new job every year, but I really quickly learned, all right, recruiting is what I want to do. I kind of like did some like hybrid roles, and I realized I want to do pure recruiting, and have had a little bit more stability since then. But learn quickly so that you have less of that jumpiness.
And I think, sorry, Thach, were you still going? I was just going to add to that. I think the biggest reason why it jeopardizes your chances is because it makes you look fickle from an employer perspective, from a hiring perspective. It seems like, yeah, you might stay here for 6 months or a year, and then you'll leave again. And generally, the ramp-up time in a new position is about 3 to 6 months. So by the time you're ramped up and actually doing your job, you're going to leave. That's sort of the message that comes across when you have to move a lot. I know it's tough, really tough to hear this, but that's how it's perceived.
No, that's great to know. So we have a question from Julie also. How honest should someone be on an interview about a negative job experience they have had?
I think you should.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I personally have always been very honest. I think it's in the way that you deliver it. You never want to shame sort of the other person in your experience. Be respectful about how you talk about it, and most importantly, have some sort of a lesson that you learn from it and how it like made you better, a better employee down the road. But I truly believe you can't hide things under a rock. They come out. So even if you might like slip through the interview without it coming up, things have a way of appearing out of the dark. So it's best to just get in front of them, is my philosophy.
I agree with that, but I would say like slightly differing opinion. I think it's good to be honest. I mean, honestly, like I've seen a lot of times where like it never comes out, or I mean, if it does come out, it's it's like 3-6 months into the job, and by that point, like they don't care anymore. Like they know you as a person. So I think to me the most important thing in that is stay positive. Like if you want to be honest and say like you had a bad boss or whatever, instead of saying my boss was a jerk, say it wasn't the right fit, and keep it at that. I would have to say there are few things that will kill a candidacy more than being negative and trash talking their previous employer. It's like, how do we know you're not going to say that about us? Or more importantly, like, are you going to take that negativity and bring it into the office?
Yeah, and also kind of building on what Thach said, you can be brief. So if there is a negative experience that you somehow can't pivot your way out of, be brief and vague about describing, and then just like move on, change the course of that conversation.
That is great to know. So we are running out of time, so we'll take one last question from Karen Lee. What advice do you have to recent grads who maybe still haven't found something a few months after graduating? How do you stay sharp and make sure you don't appear to be the last one picked or a slowly decaying mind? It's a big one.
Okay. I'll try to
go for it.
Be perseverant. It happens. No, honestly, does that look good on your resume? No, but does it make something? Is it something that makes you look terrible? No. We're also, like I mentioned 8 times by now, like there's 1,000 new grads for every job, or 100 new grads for every job. Like we know, not everyone can be selected, and it's like that first time out of the gate is really tough. So be perseverant. Do not just settle for a job. I actually think that is worse than, like, I would much rather a candidate wait 6 months, 9 months to find the right job than someone who took a job that they kind of knew they were going to hate, quit in 4 months, like that looks a lot worse. So just Uber or Lyft and make some decent money so that you can pay rent and keep searching for that right job, and try to find volunteer things to make it seem as though you're still like active and stuff.
I think Thach took the words out of my mouth, but yeah,
that's
The
perfect.
best thing you can do.
Well, it looks like we are out of time, and so and I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I want to give a big thank you to Mehul and Thach, who took this time tonight to share their expertise. If you are interested in meeting a more awesome alum like Mehul and Thach, make sure to join UCLA One, our new alumni network. Just go to ucla1.com to join, and you can meet any other alumni who are willing to meet with you, share their expertise as well. Here at Alumni, we're looking to create more programming of this kind. So if you have any questions or you have any topics that you want to submit as suggestions, make sure to email us at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu, and we will take those for future topics. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great night.
Thanks, guys.